There are some people who think that being non-heterosexual is like immoral or incorrect, and that's nonsense. But even among people who don't necessarily think that it's wrong or immoral, you still hear people say that it's like abnormal or some kind of mental deviation. And you even hear people say that some of these sexual identities are non-existent, particularly bisexuality and asexuality. Now, one might argue that since being non-heterosexual, and in that I include everything from homosexuality to bisexuality to asexuality and everything in between, since they appear to be much less common than heterosexuality, some people might think that there is some kind of abnormal condition. But it's got to be something more than the level of commonality, because for example, being left-handed is much less common than being right-handed, but you rarely hear anyone say that being left-handed is a mental abnormality. So what would make one believe that heterosexuality is the only normal sexual orientation? Heterosexuality is usually described as sexual or romantic attraction between opposite sexes or genders. So it seems to be implied by the definition of the word that there are only two sexes or two genders, which is false. And by the way, gender and sex are two different things that have very little to do with each other biologically. When you're talking about gender, that's something that is a personal identity that is subjective to each person. And the quantity of gender identities is only limited by the number of human beings on the earth, which is more than two. When you're talking about sex, that gets a little more complicated. Now, human beings, like many other living things, are a sexually dimorphic species. That means that within the species, there are traits that can be positively identified as male traits and traits that can be identified as female traits. But regardless of how we use those two terms, that does not mean that male and female are the name of the only two sexes. Many people whom we describe as being female have high cheekbones. But did you know that having high cheekbones happens as a result of a large amount of testosterone in the body, which is the male sex hormone? Colloquially and even scientifically, for the most part, we have separated human beings into males and females because it's convenient, and also because there is a high concentration of people who either have a disproportionate amount of male features or a disproportionate amount of female features. But it's still inaccurate, because even among people of the same sex, you'll find a wide variety of proportions between male and female features and traits. Not to mention, there are millions of people who don't fit cleanly into either of those two boxes. There are people born with both male and female sex organs, male organs but female chromosome pairs, female body characteristics but male sex organs, and the list goes on and on. In fact, many people who were raised as a specific gender were arbitrarily assigned that gender by their doctor because their sex at birth was ambiguous, i.e. they didn't fall cleanly into the male or the female box. And keep in mind, this is not even getting into actual sexual desire and sexual activity. That's a whole nother conversation. As I implied before, for lack of better terms, maleness and femaleness are definitely things, and I mean this biologically, not socially or gender role wise. But the sex and gender binary that we think exists because of those two things is a myth. That's just me. Actually, I don't think that's just me. I think that's just how it is. What should the next video be about? Drop a comment. I want to give a shout out to all the new subscribers. How you doing? Please press the like button. Subscribe if you like my hair. Holla.